more to say except about who we have here tonight. So Mimsy Sodofsky is here tonight. We'll be here to kind of answer questions and chat with everyone. It's just going to be kind of an informal talk. So Mimsy, if you aren't familiar, is one of the founders of the original Sudbury School up in Massachusetts, and they're in their 50th year this year, which is good synergy. We're in our 10th year, they're in year 50, so whatever that means, it means something good. So she came down and she was here visiting today to serve on our graduation panel to evaluate our students who are going up for graduation. Along with Michelle, who is sitting back right there. She's here as well. So Michelle's a staff member at the Philly Free School, so she's here as well and might jump in with questions or answers. And then our third panelist today was Allie, who you might know. She's former staff here many years ago. So we had special visitors here today, and we wanted to take the opportunity to let you all chat with Mimsy, and we're all here because of her. So.
No. But that's not, it's a nice idea.
So welcome, Mimsy.
Thank you. Oh.
Is that gonna
I can do it. I can fix it if it bothers me. I can't be filmed with my hair blowing away. I don't have any preconceptions about what people might want to talk about, what they're thinking about, what problems are going on right now in their heads as the year comes to the end and they try to think about what's going to happen next year. But I'd love to hear anything anybody wants to ask about, or you can ask about our school. But it's not sort of like asking about the same place.
Did it feel the same when you were walking around today?
Of course.
Well, folks, I think, people should just jump in.
Being you are the founder, how did you come up with the idea, the concept, or what made you think that this kind of theme of a school is very constructive for a child to an adult? I might have spammed in there a lot of questions.
Well, I'm not the founder, I'm a founder.
Oh, okay.
So there was a group of us. And actually 3 of us still work in the school, and which is kind of amazing considering that it's 50 years. But we're very old. I think what we are is very old. But we love our work, so it's not so bad. For me, it was probably different. No, I think it was the same for all of us. I had a child, and public school was not a fit for my child, who we thought was, well, let me put it a different way. He was born stubborn. He was born knowing how he wanted to spend every minute, and he wasn't interested for a second in what anybody else thought. And that was not a good thing in public school. And so we looked for a place where it would be a good thing. And then we started reading the books that were current at the time. There was a lot being written in the 60s about education and what was wrong with education. And a lot of schools being founded, none of which exist anymore except ours. But we decided that we could trust him to get his own education. We decided we could trust him, period, and that he was not going to grow up stupid, which actually turned out to be the case. He didn't grow up stupid, and his brother and sister didn't either. So that's basically it. But when you start sending your child to a school like this, that's not how you feel. You feel like, oh, am I going to make the biggest mistake of my life? Am I selling my kid down the river? And it's a long time. You see that they become happy and relaxed, but it's a long time till you understand how much intellectual stimulation they get every single day and how they put that together into a worldview.
Along those lines, so I've been a parent here for a couple years, so I'm not new. And then I first heard about the model when Peter Gray came and spoke to my psychology class 20 years earlier. But I know for me that, like, every year I sort of learn something new, or my expectations change a little bit, or I get something that I thought I got before. And I wonder, for you as a founder, were there like certain levels of the onion unpeeling as you sort of went through? Or as a founder, was it just like it was what you knew it was, and
Oh,
there
no.
it was?
No, not at all. In fact, there were always new layers, but you'd think you had it all, and then you discover that there was another layer. And that even happened this year, that we sort of put some things together. that made us realize that we hadn't gotten all the way to the core. And it doesn't matter because the school's still fine, and they're not getting less of an education because we hadn't gotten to the core. It's just interesting because it is a fitting and exciting thing to keep analyzing why this kind of school works, and also why it works in this country particularly well, and not so well in other countries, or not so easily in other countries.
Could you elaborate on that?
Well, it has to do with the fundamentals in our Declaration of Independence and in our Constitution. And we guarantee people the liberty to seek happiness. It's a guarantee in our way of life. And it's very deep, and you don't realize how deep it is and how deeply ingrained it is in every one of us, and how important it is to every one of us. And eventually you begin to realize that it's different in this culture than it is in most other cultures. So it's different than in France, where it's égalité, fraternité, equalité, which I probably got wrong, but in the wrong order. But it's different there. It's not individual liberty. It's liberty of the country. And that's probably, France and England are probably the closest to us, or countries that are French or English are probably the closest to us, and yet not quite the same. And it's harder for people to start Sudbury schools there than it is here, where heaven knows it's hard enough. We feel that we're always working on the cutting edge, and always, thank you, and always in startup mode, because people get scared and they run away, or they get scared and they don't come to you, and so it's hard. It's very hard.
So what age was your son when you decided to find a different structure for his learning curves?
6. First grade, yeah. First grade was bad. In kindergarten, we lived in a nice little town in upper New York State, and it snowed every day, all the way through May. And he would run to the school bus stop by himself, I might add, every single morning in his snow boots and coat. And he was absolutely convinced, and I think this is what made kindergarten so good for him. He was absolutely convinced that if he could finally take his boots off, that he'd be able to fly. And it didn't work out, but he wasn't that disappointed. I mean, I think maybe he had an idea it wouldn't work, but he was really working so hard at it.
I have a question. You might know, Mimsy, today that, well, I'm sure you know that screen time is a huge concern for a lot of families, how much time their kids spend on the screen. And I'm curious what the concern was in the 60s and 70s before computers were a thing. What were parents worried about?
Oh, we had nothing to worry
There
about.
was no worries. It was just...
I don't think it's really screen time. I mean, I think screen time is just a new thing to put it on. But I think it's that the child will do what the child wants to do, which is play all day. And I think that was the problem then, and that's the problem now. People do not value play as what it is, which is work. If it's kids' work, and they learn they learn everything by playing. And right now they're doing a lot of it on screens, but then they weren't. They had pieces of wood that they found in the woods to use as rifles. So they could play war games, but no war games on the computers.
I was just gonna follow up. I guess sometimes my daughter just started here in the fall, and sometimes I wonder about the screen thing, because to me as an adult, I find it so hard to put it down, and I'm not even getting a reward, but I continue to do it. And so I guess I wonder, do you think it is I guess you do think it is like a stick or like another toy, or if there's something in which these are like objects that are designed to capture somebody's attention, perhaps it's it's not actually like a matter of choice. You know what I mean?
No, that's not what I think. I think we use screens to advance our knowledge of the world. I do, I'm sure you do. And what else? You know, we don't use it we don't just stare at it. And kids kids do that too, but they do that by doing research, the same as we do. But they also play a tremendous number of games, and if you watch them, the games are very complicated and very sophisticated, and as soon as they get to the top level of a game and they get bored with it, they drop that game and go on to something harder. So I don't worry about it at all. I mean, I have a grandson who spent an awful lot of time on a computer and does seem to be extremely educated anyway. Yeah.
Since your kids went through basically from beginning to end of their childhood years, did they, as they got older and went into the adult world, do you think they appreciated what a Sudbury education gave them, or did they not realize that they got something special, or I guess how do your kids feel looking back? And I'm not asking whether they're glad or not glad that they went through Sudbury, but do they really comprehend what you had given them?
I think yes. Now, my oldest children were basically pioneers, and so they went through the hardest part of the school, the founding and the first few years. And they certainly it was certainly sort of dug into their flesh what they were getting, not by us, but by life. And my youngest child is quite a bit younger, and it was, to me, he's the most amazing because I never knew what he was doing. I thought he should be doing X and Y, and he was always doing Q and Z. And yes, he's the same. He's very educated and very well-rounded, and he would never have been well-rounded if he had done Q and Z, because X and Y were the things he needed to make a whole person instead of a bright person, instead of just a bright person. But he's extraordinarily grateful. They're all extraordinarily grateful. They can't, there's no way they can measure, they feel, what they got. And they felt, when he went to college, my youngest one, he felt very sorry for the other kids. He said they were sitting in a classroom for 12 years and I was playing. And they don't know anything I don't know. It's a little hint. Yeah.
Has the model changed over the 50 years? Do things get changed as you learn more about how kids use it?
No.
No.
I mean, things change because as we know, there weren't computers. And things change because they evolve. And in the beginning, we had no laws, no rules, and no judicial system. And we evolved those in response to needs. But that's not really changing things. That's just sort of starting with a not quite complete set and going on afterwards to make the set complete. But I really don't think there's anything different. And when kids come back, when people come back who've been away for 20 or 30 years, they say the school looks just the same but smaller, which is, you know, the way it is. When you're little, things look bigger.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Why do you think JC works so well? It's seemingly so boring, but there's magic there.
Boring? It's not boring? No, it's so exciting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you look at it from the outside, and it's just people sitting, it's very kind of cut and dry.
Well, I think it's pretty amazing that a child walks into JC either with a complaint or with a complaint against them, and a whole group of people of all ages listen to what everybody says happened and then start to talk about it and hear testimony and make judgments. I think that is so empowering for every kid. I think it's the most important part of the school. And it is true that a lot of people just like to do it for fun. And it's also true that a lot of very young people are very good at it, which is sort of surprising. I mean, really young, like 6.
My great grandson, he's 4, diagnosed with autism. But basically, all the things that he had done from the age of 1 to 4 is almost primary structured like the school. He wants to do what he wants to do for as long as he wants to do it. And then when he feel like he should go to do something else, then he wants to. And before we learned that he had autism, we were always trying to make him do this. And it'll frustrate him that he might want to bump his, but we didn't know what, he'll scream out loud. But if we just let him go through the day, just being him, it's a happy day for everyone,
I think that's often true for children with autism. Not always,
So I
but
feel
often.
Like a school like this is a good fit for autistic children as well. Because they're able to function and figure out what they want to do through the course of the day.
I don't really know. I don't know if that's the answer to that. I think that schools like this generally do not have expertise in treating autistic children, but freedom is a wonderful thing. Freedom is very empowering and very exciting, and you usually learn a lot from it. Yes.
So I'm curious how JC evolved in Sudbury Valley School.
How JC what?
JC started. How the concept of JC started. So you said that there was no JC
Yes.
at the beginning.
Well, it started very differently. It started as something we called the Committee on School Affairs, and we realized that that there were disagreements happening and somebody needed to do something about it. So the school meeting chose a rotating committee
Okay.
that would look at complaints and figure out what they thought happened. At that time, they sent the school meeting the results of their investigation, and the school meeting could decide whether to have trials or whether to accuse people of things, how to sentence them. But it was a very long process. It would take like 4 or 5 weeks from the beginning to the end. You're some 7-year-old who's done some little thing. It's a long time to wait and get a sentence and think, what? What am I being sentenced for? So we sort of compressed it so that the JC does more than just investigate. It also makes, it also charges and
So there was school
makes
meeting
sentences.
before then JC came,
Mhm.
the system. So I have one more question. So now I think Sudbury Valley capacity is 150 students.
No, but I wish we did. We have about 130 right now.
Okay. And you started probably from small group, right?
Yes, yes.
So now as the school is bigger, do you still get a chance to interact with all the kids and know
Oh,
them
yes.
personally?
Oh, yeah. That's not that many kids. Yeah. You know them all. Every single one.
What was your favorite part of your job? I know it's a hard question, but
Oh my gosh.
I know.
My favorite part is watching kids play outside, which I don't do that much, but I sure enjoy it when I do it. And seeing the way they interact. For instance, does anybody know what the game Werewolf is? No. Well, it's a game that comes in a box sort of like Uno. And it has cards, and people sit in a circle, and you pass out cards, and you get an identity with the card, werewolf or 2 other possible things that I don't remember. And then the play starts, and people sit with their eyes closed and do like this until the leader tells them something. Heaven only knows what. And hello. And so something that's really beautiful for me to see is that there are kids who can't read. You have to read the cards. Kids who can't read, sitting there playing, 5 and 6-year-olds, and 14-year-olds, and 18-year-olds, and sometimes even adults. And to me, it's really beautiful to see things like that go on that take people from all ages, and they're together and they have a wonderful time. So that's probably my favorite part of the job. But I like my job, you know that.
Do you remember when the age, was it just age mixing from the very beginning?
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
we're not even gonna
Yes, there was this horrible boy that somebody had to protect all the little kids from until we got the nerve to realize what you do with a kid like that, which is expel it. I mean, he was nasty. So there was always somebody watching the young kids in the first few weeks. But we learned.
Do you have anything that you say, well, two situations. One, to families where the kid is kind of a middle or young teenager and they suddenly feel like their school is not giving them what they need and that they want to move on to something else. That situation, which sometimes comes up here. And then also to families that can no longer come to this school for some outside reason, like they have to move somewhere. Is the best choice of action to find something as close as possible to this, or just go way to the other end and just like deal with public school and play the game? Do you know what I mean?
I don't think there are things as close as possible.
Right.
I think when a kid is in their teen years in school, they've gotten everything they're going to get out of public schooling. I really do. And so that's one thing, the parents of those kids shouldn't worry about whether their kids are going to not learn particular things at Sudbury Valley. And that's important. And also, kids who come when they're teenagers understand what's going on with them, see the things that happen in their lives, and understand how they have changed in the school. And if you go there when you're 4 or 5, you never understand that. It's just life. So there's a lot of little nuances. But if they go to all sorts of other places afterwards. But I don't think they should. Oh well, if it was my kid, I'd send him to military school if he couldn't go to a free school. because now it's funny, but you know, if you go to a really structured school, you know why you're doing things. It's not a progressive place where it's nice and you're supposed to like it. It's a structured school where they say, this is what you're going to do, and you have no choice about it. And I think that's a really good situation if you can't be free.
It's like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
A wolf in sheep's clothing, yes.
At these progressive schools.
Yes.
So to follow up on Brooke's question a little bit,
Wait a minute, aren't you Michelle?
I
Weren't
told
you just over here?
Do you have any tips on how to help a student? And this is sort of the first part of Brooke's question, but when students develop a crisis of confidence about what they're getting from the school, I always wish that we could just like help them see all that they've learned, like just somehow inject the vocabulary into their heads or something to give them the words, because I see tremendous growth and I know the words for what those things are, but they don't often, they kind of feel it in a, in a sort of esoteric way, but they don't have words for it, and so they think they haven't learned anything.
And people are telling them out in the world, in their neighborhood and in their families.
Help those kids
Yeah.
through that moment.
You can, I mean, you can and you can't. You just keep talking to them, but you can't always help them. And it is very, very undermining to have the whole world telling you you're crazy, which everybody who sends a kid to a Sudbury school has. The adults have it and the kids have it. And don't think for a minute that the kids don't have it, because they're out there too. And, you know, people are saying, do you know the capitals of the states? And you're saying, do you know how many hours have you played Minecraft? Yes.
So I feel like the only solution then is for there to be as many adults as possible in that kid's life who are going to remind them, like, I feel like if they have staff and parents who have read the literature that you guys have so graciously published, then that can be getting it from multiple places of that reassurance in the vocabulary. So, that's the only thing that I think might work. I assume that's why you put so much effort into writing all those people.
Well, as far as the writing goes, sometimes you can't help it. I mean, you can say that we so graciously provide it, but the fact is that it's like something you have to do a lot of the time with writing. And yes, if everybody was surrounded by a perfect life, then that would be really nice, but everybody isn't. Nobody is, practically. Nobody is. Even probably your children are in places where they get a lot of grief about what they do.
I'm curious if there were ever times when like a change to the model was tried or suggested and voted down or anything, like after you decided on how JC was going to work and the rulemaking? Were there ever alternatives to that entertained?
Things were refined. No, not really.
Like nobody in any of the school communities ever was like, what if we did it a different way?
Oh, no,
and
no, no,
talked
no.
about it?
No, this is just, I'm talking about us. I don't know what they do in other schools. They don't do JC the same way here, but I'm sure they do it fairly here. So I don't, that's just us. We have no ownership or anything like that over any other school that does or doesn't call itself Sudbury. They're totally free to do what they want. And some of them do some mighty interesting things that are not in any way like us and still call themselves Sudbury.
And at your school, no alternatives were proposed?
For school meetings or JC?
Yeah.
No, when we changed JC in the big way, that was a major alternative. It took months of debate. Oh my God. That's, I mean, you know.
Figure out how it would be the first time?
It's hard to change a couch at our school. Kids like it to be the way it was yesterday, last year, last month, you know. Yeah. It takes a long time to iron things out. Even now, it'll take a long time often to iron out a sentence for somebody who's done something medium. Not really light, not really bad, but medium. So it's not very cut and dried, and it's very stimulating.
Have you found over the years that it's been the same, speaking generally, type of family that seeks out a Sudbury school? And if so, what would you say about that type of family? Or has that changed over the years as maybe our political climate has changed, or maybe even as schooling has become more test-based and stuff like that? Do you see more families, less families at different times?
We don't have a particular kind of family. We have never been able to say anything about demographics at our school. Never. And that's, you know, it's kind of irritating because you could aim your public relations at a certain demographic if you had a demographic. But we don't. And I think that certain things make enrollment go up and down. And I'm not even sure what those are besides the economy has. When school testing first came in Massachusetts, we had a bigger enrollment. But people realized that their children were not going to get things bludgeoned into their heads at our school, so they took them out again. So, yeah.
What is the youngest age?
4. But not every 4-year-old is able to do it. Most of them can, but 4-year-old girls are almost always able to do it. 4-year-old boys, I'd say 75%. Well, it's true. Girls are different than boys when they're that age. Girls know how to, are interested in doing things in ways that will get them praise and stuff.
Because my both kids started here as 5-year-old, the older is girl and the younger was boy, and I know the differences they have.
Yeah. It's funny because I was saying boys are so easy, they just do things, and girls are always so dramatic. And I forget whether it was Brooke, I think, that said, "Not here. The little girls are tough as nails and the little boys are dramatic." We've never had that.
The parents of those boys are all laughing. They know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
of course they know.
Can you talk to us about some of your alumni now that they're all adults and out doing a variety of things? Because I just find that inspiring.
What would you like to know? I mean, we have alumni that are almost 60, or maybe 60 years old. So some of them have.
Can you give us a highlight or two from? I know they've done various panels, and there are like recordings of them talking. Just some of the ways that they describe how they felt Sudbury Valley prepared them for adulthood and gave them the foundation that they needed.
Yeah, I think the word agency is a good word. I like the word agency a lot. And last week we had a visitor who was founding a school in, who was a Mormon man who was founding a school in Utah, of course. No, not Utah, not Utah. No, I actually think it was Utah. But anyway, he talked a lot about agency because that's very important in their religion. But I think that that's what kids get, and that's what they talk about. Having been able to figure out their own problems and having as much help as they needed with that, but really being able to do things on their own and go where they wanted. I think the time is amazing for them. Time that they would have spent almost totally structured is just free and loose, and they're able to do whatever they want. And I think that makes children grow up into very strong adults, and actually, I'd say in general, happier adults than most adults are, and more able to make changes in their life, more able to form really good lasting relationships. Although I have to say that they also form relationships with people they went to school with that never end. Never end.
I have two boys here, 13 and 15, and they are friends with a group of people, and I'd say about 2/3 of them are not coming back next year. And they don't seem as concerned as I do about that. And I just wonder about the dynamics of them being this big group, and now they're sort of left to find a new way to be here.
Why aren't they coming back?
The people that are
Mhm.
coming back, a couple of them are going to school, some of them are graduating, some of them just are almost aged out, but decided that the money was too much, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the
Mhm.
certain.
Yeah, there will be other kids, and they will make other friends, and they will find other ways to spend their time than they've been spending it with that group of kids. But it's going to hurt. There's no way to have your family ripped away and not have it hurt. Yeah, but they usually overcome it.
And what about I don't know, I guess the friendship dynamic obviously is going to change, but it's still, I guess it's up to them to.
Sometimes it would be nice if it changed more than it did. Sometimes kids that leave our school I'm really happy to see gone, and yet they're still friends with so many people. And I hear their name all the time and I think, So, yeah, the friendship dynamic changes, but they'll still be friends. They have their cell phones and their texts and their Instagram and their, what's the other thing? Not FaceTime. No, they have FaceTime. Snapchat, yes. Snapchat's the one I can't use.
Discord, that's.
Discord is not a good thing.
Well, I was going to say, mine is one of those who has decided to leave. Actually, he's been here 5 years. He's 14, and he wants to go to an art school. And he went through a very rigorous process, got accepted, and he's going. He's very excited about it. And he has already planned out what days his school is closed, that you guys are open, and he is absolutely worked out with his friends who is bringing him as their guest on which days. So preserving the friendships is really important to him, and I've seen this confidence in him that's out of nowhere, and like he's so excited yet sad at the same time. He went and registered for all honors classes. I mean, and this is a kid who technically doesn't know these things, and he's like, I'm going to take the honors classes. Okay, great. So it's like, for me, I'm like in turmoil because I'm like, oh my God, is he going to do this? Then he says, I'm going to try out for cross country. I'm like, who are you? So, you know, it's really bittersweet for me, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to come tonight, because I, you know, like, this has been such a part of our lives for the last 5 years, and like to see him like make these huge changes. I'm like proud, but I'm scared to death inside, because I don't know if he understands what the, you know, this is going to be like. And, you know, I don't know, you know, he was a kid who was a young kid, had a lot of anxiety, and this made that go away for him. And, you know, I don't know if this change is going to be, you know, good, bad, ugly, beautiful. I don't know. But
Well,
it's,
the confidence comes from knowing that he's competent.
absolutely.
And
yeah,
that
that's
does
from-
mean that he feels he can control the anxiety.
Absolutely.
I mean, maybe it's not totally true, but it'll be true enough probably. And if not, you know what? There'll be a place here for him.
Yeah.
But they don't usually come back
And he
from
said, "What
things
if I
like
don't get
that.
into the
No,
school?" I'm like,
no,
then you stay where you are.
no. I mean, if he's going to an art school, he'll be fine. He'll be
Do
grand.
people come back often? Or no, you just said no.
Occasionally, but even kids who've gone, for instance, to dance schools sometimes come back, which is very surprising. But not that many come back. Not as many leave as used to either in the middle. But there's always some.
So this last conversation sort of, see if I can phrase this into a question, but I think that, I know, Brooke, a while ago, you and I were talking about how some people, when they come to Sudbury, they bring their kid to Sudbury for happiness and freedom, and so whenever their kid is going through a painful period, they think, well, why am I risking all this if my kid's not happy, right?
And paying money.
In this moment, right? And so that, you know, that through transformations, right, that there are going to be like periods of coming home and saying I'm bored, periods of whatever. But how are there? And then maybe there are those kids where it's not a good fit. You know, do you as a staff member ever, apart from those major disciplinary things, ever sort of have the sense of being able to tell the difference of when it's just that it's going to be a painful year and that is part of the experience, right? That's part of life, is that it's going to be a painful year.
It may not be a whole painful year. It might be a painful few months.
Yeah, no, it might be a few months, but that part of the, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
that it's going to be, you know, this is going to be hard, or, okay, now you're, you know, changing friend groups, and that's going to be hard. Now, you know, this thing is happening, and that's going to be hard, right? Because we know that Sudbury doesn't protect you from life,
No,
from pain, from
not at all.
relationships. But are there, when parents have that anxiety, do you ever have a sense of when to pull through, or ever have the time like, well, this might not really be good. You know, maybe this is a, you know, like a call, or is it just sort of wait and see? You're like, that's not really
A call or just wait and see?
Do you ever,
From
I mean,
who?
is it always sort of, do you always have the belief that if you wait it out, is it always sort of wait it out and it will work out in the long run, or are there ever moments when you feel like there's a...
It's usually, for us, it's usually if you wait it out, it'll work out in the long run, but that doesn't mean it's that way for the parents. And parents can get very discouraged very fast, especially parents who are used to homeschooling. Parents who are used to homeschooling have a lot of trouble keeping their hands off their kids, and that often leads to dissonance with the model.
Sometimes we describe our JC as being, or what either we describe it or other people describe it as being a system that's based in restorative justice. Do you agree with that label?
Oh, yes, I've never used that label, but that's exactly what it is.
Well,
I mean, it's a well-known concept, restorative justice.
because sometimes it feels punitive, right? I mean, sometimes it doesn't feel restorative, you know.
Well, you have two things to worry about. You have the child and you have the community. So you have to keep it in a place where the community is not harmed and the community feels that justice is served, and where the kid also can grow. It's not that simple often.
So you've been a staff person for a long time. I'm sure you've seen staff people come and go in 50 years, and I was hoping for my own benefit that you, I guess, could, if there are common pitfalls perhaps for staff people. Sure. Yeah.
No.
Oh,
There's so many pitfalls that I don't know if they're common ones. I mean, the most common thing, this is going to sound awful, the most common problem we have, or the most common two problems we have to be a Monty Python person, are that a person comes who really isn't able to grasp the depth of the model, isn't able to project it to other people, and therefore isn't that comfortable in it. And the other thing is sometimes people aren't willing to work very hard. Are you ready to work that hard?
I hope so.
Go, Josh. What are you going to do? What kinds of things do you do in school?
Well, so I suppose I've been spending my day doing
Bikes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
doing attendance. I mean, I think honestly it's the thing that takes up the most, time during my, 7.5, 8 hours here. But I have done some other committee work. I served with the school meeting clerk for 1 month and enjoyed it very much. But most of the time, I'm sort of trying to, figure out where I plug in a little bit.
Yeah, you've hardly been here any time at all. That you should be feeling just that way. That's really that's really normal.
Discussion about your song in the car this morning.
Oh, yeah.
They love it.
My son learned what oppression means. So
that
he told me all about it.
What a cheap trick for the re-election.
Oh, you did.
do you go out for re-election every year?
Yes, don't you?
Yeah.
Isn't that the best thing?
Yeah, it's the best day of the year, but I don't, maybe you
No,
do.
it's the best idea, but isn't it the best thing, the most fun thing?
Yeah, it's the most fun day. Yeah.
Is it? I don't.
You don't?
No.
But do you feel irritated when you don't get, so I got a bunch of abstains this year, and that is something I'm really struggling with.
Yeah. Yeah, I have always felt.
I want them to be no's. It bothers me.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I occasionally get an abstain, and you never know that sometimes people don't mark carefully, and my name is always at the end. That's what I tell myself. But it's probably not the truth. It's probably just an abstain. And yeah, the no's are always hard. This year I didn't get any no's, but I usually do. I usually get one or two. And it's very hard because you want to know why people. But then again, when somebody as outspoken as me, is in the school meeting and in the JC, and constantly trying to do things that are crisp, I can understand why it irritates people.
So tell us about a day in your life at your school.
Oh my.
But a half a day.
A minute.
A minute, okay. Which minute? What hour? I usually get to school when there aren't very many other people there. And so I walk around, I hang up my coat, put away my lunch, check in, and then walk around saying hello to everybody that's there. Because there's not that many people there. I mean, I would do that anyway, but at 8:45, it's really nice because everybody's sort of a cozy little family. And then I go look at my email, and sometimes that causes me to cry, and other times it causes me to get mad, but usually it's just answer it all. And often I'm on JC. I'm on JC if it's my turn, and there's only 7 of us, so there's a lot of turns. But also when there's a case that
Sorry. It's very hard to open the door, but Miles helped me.
Okay. You gotta use number 5.
often there's a case that involves the law, And if there's a case that involves the law, I'm the assistant official authorities clerk, and I am in JC for that. And I love to be in JC, so that's a lot of fun. And sometimes there's new kids to show around, and sometimes new kids enroll. Those are the really nice things that happen.
So one of the things I find hardest to, one of the many things that's hard to explain is that you see a kid who's been in a Sudbury school for a while, and they're very kind and polite, and they look you in the eye, and they have good social skills, and they say thank you and please, and oh, you're welcome, and here, let me hold the door for you, and they're lovely people, but yet we don't, have posters on the wall that say be kind, be civil. We don't, remind people to say thank you. So I'm sure you've seen kids come in with chips on their shoulders and being defensive, and somehow, without anyone telling them how to be good people, they become good people. And is that why? Like, why?
It's called modeling.
Okay.
Other people are modeling it for them. And when's the last time somebody did something for you that you didn't say thank you? I mean, it's just plain good manners. They learn good manners. They learn to treat each other the way they're treated. And that's really good for them. It stands them in good stead when they go out into the world.
I feel like it also must have to do with JC a little bit. I'm just thinking, a parent that I know whose kids go to public school today just told me about an incident with their child where somebody, there was some hitting, minor stuff, but then they talked about how at school, like one of their sessions was actually you had to say something to compliment somebody, and that was like part of I don't know. It just felt really terrible. And so there's these two people having an issue. So she's trying to be nice. She says, "Oh, I like your shirt." And so the person says, "Well, I think your shirt is ugly." But it's all being like monitored and taken care of by all these parents, like phone calls at the end of the day. What are we going to do? And they never get to work out their issue. And I feel like, whether it's JC or just by like nobody's going to play with you if you're a jerk. So like I feel like it is definitely modeling, but being responsible for yourself has got to play.
Yeah, of course.
such a huge role.
Yeah. And if your parents are taking the responsibility and telling you you're really not capable of it and they have to take care of that themselves, you're eventually going to be pulled out of school. They can't let go. And they have to let go in order for you to be successful.
You had mentioned that you've seen a lot of variance in Sudbury schools, so what have you found
Yeah.
are the most constants, and what do you see as those variances?
That's a really good question. And there was a time when I spent a lot of time visiting other schools, and that hasn't been true in the last few weeks, but in the last few years rather. But I was in Southern Maryland, I guess it's Southern, in Temple Hills, Maryland, late last week, and I went to a Sudbury school there. That's a Christian school, and I had never really seen that before. It was very beautiful. It was very beautifully done, and the people were lovely, and the kids were adorable. But they definitely had devotion for a minute or two or 5 in the morning, and I did the most awful thing. I did this sort of thing in the evening, and there was pizza for everybody, and I think I didn't have any pizza beforehand because it was fairly early. And after everybody had sort of stopped asking questions and it seemed to be over, I turned around and said, well, I think it's time for everyone to have a celebratory piece of pizza. And I went over and took a piece of pizza out of the box. But what was actually time to do was, you're going to say it. What? Yeah. So I really, but they were very nice to me. So that's, huh?
They don't call it JC, right?
They don't call it no, prayer?
No, they don't call their judicial system JC.
Oh no, they call it something else.
Yeah.
Did you kind of, it's judiciary something. I don't know, I forgot, system perhaps. It could be JS. But yeah, and that's probably why. And Nobody told me that, but that's true. And one little boy said to me, they heard me talk about Sudbury Valley and they wanted to know how it was different, because they're a very young school and don't have a lot of facilities yet. And they also can only play games one day a week, play video games. And he said, "Is Sudbury Valley a Christian school?" He was little, maybe 9. And I said, "No, it isn't, but you can have your religion and your religious duties and your religious devotions outside of school." And he said, "I don't think that's right." And I said, "Okay." I mean, he was serious about it. He was thinking about it. And I was glad that somebody thought about it and had an opinion like that. Very glad. I thought that was nice. Especially that was before I had embarrassed myself by grabbing the pizza. It was quite embarrassing. But I don't know. That's a big thing. And I'm having trouble thinking about other things that are different. There are schools that are unable to exist without a certain amount of classwork being offered because of legal things. That's true everywhere in Europe practically. So that's different because they want to be Sudbury schools and they think they are, and they only sort of are. So that's a big difference.
What do you think about the worldwide? I mean, there's so many schools opening all over the world right now, but not in the U.S.
There's so many schools trying to open and opening and not staying open, which is true to some extent in this country too, but much less. This country is a much better climate for.
Is that hard for you all to see the schools not be able to kind of get past those initial humps?
Hard for what?
Is it hard to see these schools?
Yeah, except that I think that, it's hard, but sometimes they could realize it was coming, and somehow they don't. They say, we had some people visiting from Turkey a couple of weeks ago, and they're absolutely sure they're going to start a school like this in Turkey, and they're not going to start a school like this in Turkey. It's just impossible. And, what are you going to say? Go home and forget it?
What did you say?
Why don't you? Well, one of them was an American citizen. It was a couple. We said, "Why don't you move here?" That's what we said. And it's not that easy to move to this country, even if you want to now. So, not even if you're a citizen with a spouse who isn't. Sometimes the spouse is not. He's coming back. I don't think he liked us laughing at him.
What's the breakdown look like at Sudbury Valley School of boys versus girls versus other?
Oh my, I don't know.
Well,
I really don't know the answer to that.
We seem to generally have more boys.
We always have had more boys.
Yeah.
It's closer now, but then when you add the other, I don't know which way it tilts. And we don't fill that out on forms anymore, even state forms. We don't fill out sex. We've never filled out race or anything like that, or religion, but now we don't fill out sex.
That's a common thing I've heard at other Sudbury schools too, is there generally being more boys than girls.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because boys are less amenable to sitting down and staying still for 6 or 7 hours a day. And I think it's also because for a boy it's like an insult to them. It's like they just can't. They're giving a part of themselves away if they do that. And for a girl, she gives a little part away, but she knows it doesn't mean anything. It's funny, they can do it. They can do it without ruining their own selves, their own self-image. But I don't know if that's really why. That's what I think.
What about the
No, the big wad is always about 13 and 14, maybe 15 too, because we always have a lot of kids who started when they were little, and they get older. But I don't know why the wad is always that. Sometimes it's 17 and 18, and they all graduate at once, and then you're really in big trouble the next year, which is what happened to us. Not this year, but last year. We had like 27 kids leave for graduation. It was pretty horrible. But a whole new set of kids stepped into leadership roles, and that was not horrible. That was nice.
Had you been closer to 150 then, and that's why you're back down toward 130?
Yeah, we were 150. Yeah. And we haven't quite recovered. We'll recover next year, I hope.
Yeah, so my question is, like, in last 50 years, did you come across an institution where you thought Sudbury philosophy is not going to work for some kids in school, or one kid in school, or is that never?
Yes.
It happened?
Yes.
And how did you sort that out?
How do we what? Sort it
How
out?
did you sort that out? Yeah.
Well, you try very hard through working with them through the judicial system. And if they're just impossible, you eventually, and I mean impossible, we're very patient. You expel them. And that's usually that kind of thing. It's usually a disciplinary problem. There have been a few kids who presented neurological problems that we felt we were not capable of dealing with. And their parents were in denial about usually. So we felt the parents needed a jolt. And whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you don't know. There's a lot of decisions you have to make. Anything else? Yes?
Earlier this year, there was some discussion about learning disabilities. And have you run across that with kids in your school where parents are concerned that there's a learning disability, and how do you work through that?
Theoretically, 20% of the kids in America have learning disabilities. Theoretically, a lot more than 20% of the kids at Sudbury Valley have learning disabilities. Actually, I think nobody has learning disabilities. I think learning disabilities are school-based. And if you haven't been diagnosed with it before you get there, you're not going to be diagnosed with it because you're going to just learn the way you learn and at your pace. It's often because you read late or because you have, what is it called? What did the boy say today?
ADHD?
No.
Are you talking about dyslexia?
Not dyslexia. No, was it dysgraphia? No.
Math or reading?
No.
Not dysgraphia?
Dysgraphia is writing, math. Dyscalculia. Yeah. Dyscalculia. And you know, people in the world, most people in the world do not need a whole lot of higher level math to go through life. Some do, and those people don't have any trouble getting it. And we don't ever sit around and worry about whether they know math.
This is for this school. Is all the staff staying? I don't know.
Staying for next year?
Yeah.
I mean, my child has been here a while, but she don't take changes all that well. You know, so I mean, not just for my child, every child.
Yes.
She don't take changes. She like just keep the same. And we all know she's a socialist. You know, she would come up to
I don't hear
everybody.
very well, so I can't.
Oh.
No, you're fine, you're fine.
Oh.
Well, I was just gonna say, so has your max been somewhere in the 150 range in terms of enrollment?
No, we've been higher than that.
Oh, okay.
When the state testing system first went into, first came in Massachusetts, we were higher than that.
And so then my question would be, I would have to double check my sources, but there's a lot of study of like kind of like nomadic groups that are democratically based, and usually once they hit about 150, they split off. You can kind of maintain your organization and your oral structure within that group, and then much larger, it breaks down, and people have a tendency to splinter out. So I was kind of curious when you were getting started, and you have this democratic model. I mean, were you looking at some of the literature on democratic societies, or were you just kind of like going as you went, like kind of feeling your way?
Well, yes. Yes, but no. I mean, it was true. We were already thinking, even in the early days, when we thought we were going to be really big fast, that we didn't know how many people could be in a real community at once, and also in our campus and school, but that's sort of beside the point, but in a real community. And you know what you said about, I've read that too many times, we were just fine at 200. So we don't know, but we don't know how we would have been at 250. So there's no way to know yet.
But you were a fairly mature community also at 200 with a location and
Yes, yes, that's true.
things that were not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you have your hand up, somebody?
What advice do you have for parents who get blowback from extended family or even a resistant partner about the decision to keep their child or to start enrolling?
Well, you know, it's silly to say because people aren't going to do it. You ask them to read, you ask them to come to visit the school, you ask them to come to a school event if they can or if they will, and you pepper them with literature and articles and things, and send them people's blog posts, but that's not likely to matter. It's not likely to matter, and they're not likely to read them anyway. So I don't have any advice. I'm sorry.
I just rewatched Danny Greenberg's interview a while ago with like Mark Oppenheimer and
Oh yeah.
I just rewatched it for some reason, and it was, I think.
What
he
was the
did it
reason?
Really well. Because I was telling a friend about it from before, and then I was trying to find it, and I was like, let me just watch the whole thing again. So I did. But I think he was pretty effective in that he would just keep pushing it back on them. What did you do today? And not just what did you do today, like in the tell me sense, but in the who made those decisions? How did you decide to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that, like, well, what happens in the world? Like, you know, and he would just, so I just noticed it seemed like a pretty, although actually the guy interviewing him was very frustrated with the lack of information he was getting from his answers, I was very satisfied. So I can't say it's effective for the other person, but for me watching, it was very satisfying.
Yeah. Well, he had already visited the school, Mark Oppenheimer, before that interview was made, so he knew what we were.
In the interview, he
yeah.
was trying to say, well, explain to people that don't understand, and he kept, you know,
Like
and
me.
I think that Danny Greenberg kept sort of saying, like, well, it's like anything. What goes on in your community? And he kept saying, like, walk me through, for I understand, but walk through the other people. And he just sort of refused to give him these sort of.
And the way they learn to read is,
Yes.
one day they sit down with Cat in the Hat comes back. Can you tell me what's on your shirt? The little girl and the tiger.
It's just a girl and a tiger, and it reminds me of my daughter.
Ooh, I see. One of the 5 or 6-year-olds?
9.
9. Fierce?
She was probably 7 when I bought it. So.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, so yeah.
Anybody else have anything they want to say?
Well, one of our students recently said that I just thought was a gem. It was Cass, who you met today, and it was in a video for one of the schools that was getting shut down in the UK or in Europe, and so we made a video of support. And so we just said, do you have any words to share with the school that might be facing shutdown? And he said, I think even if you're at the school for a short amount of time, any amount of time you spend there is a gift, which I thought was a really beautiful thing to say, but I don't know if I agree
It's
with
true.
that.
No, it's true.
Even a month where it's all hell and
Oh, a
shut.
month. No, they were alive for a whole year.
Oh, that's, yeah, in that school, but,
Yeah.
this point was sort of like any amount of time in this environment is going to be good for
Yes,
people.
I think so. And I'll tell you why I think so. We had to move away from Sudbury Valley for a while when the school was very young. It was in 1968. And we moved away for like 9 months. And I saw it in my son, who had so much trouble in first grade. Now, then he was in second grade, and he just walked into the schoolroom, opened up the book that he was supposed to work in, opened up his own book and cited it, and everything was fine from then on.
This was after being at Sudbury Valley.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he didn't have any trouble, but he didn't like it, and he was mighty anxious to go back.
Why do you think, is, Connor's moving on, so, kids transition back into very different environments. What do you think it is that why are they able to do that?
Because they're much more self-confident. They're much more sure of their own ability to handle things.
One thing I noticed is some younger Sudbury kids feel like, well, they feel kind of a lack of self-confidence because they know they go to a different kind of school. The neighbors in their neighborhood all go to that other kind of school. And so while they love their school, they also feel like I must be missing something that everyone else is getting. And I don't know if I can do it. But yet, we see year after year after year, kids that have to transition or choose to transition, they do really well. And is it just confidence?
I think so. I think that they have figured out enough about who they are, and that people can't shake that. And when you think about going to first grade, you don't know that much about who you are, or maybe what you know is about to be shredded. So I'm not sure which it is, but they're strong. They're strong, and my kids were very strong. In fact, they're still very strong.
Just to add on to that, that's, we're potentially looking at a move this summer, and I know, my son's about to be 13, and there's a part of me that never wants him to leave a Democratic community, and there's another part of me that's like, oh, he's formed.
He is, it's true.
He's there. Somebody sat him down and quizzed him on the school when we were in Nashville last summer, and he was barely turned 12 at the time. He's like, well, it's complex. You have to go, and he's starting into this thing, and then he pontificated, and everybody in the room is just like, we're cool with it. This is actually friends of ours who are starting a school in Nashville, and it's opening in this fall. But there was their friends that were quizzing him. But anyways, I was gonna say, again, back to some of the I had a little too much grad school in anthropology, and I was going to say there is this, language acquisition for children is 0 to age 7. Whatever you're learning in the language, then, even if you never speak it again, if you had it as a 5-year-old, if you learn it again as an adult, you'll have access to the native ability to speak it from then. And the same thing, I think, I know my son was a late reader, so he was not, and he had vision issues, and he, actually reading hurt him. It caused him to have a physical avoidance of close work.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wasn't really reading until about 10 or 11, and the only reason he did was so that he could participate in the video game chat.
Yes.
He had no other reason.
That's an important reason.
He was on audiobooks and videos for learning.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I could literally see, and even just in that period of time, some of the vision issue, because some of it was farsightedness, he developed enough that enough of it went away that the key pain point has actually moved. So some of it he just needed time to grow up a little bit. And I found that really, and we have the grandparent that, thinks we're idiots, and the only reason we get away with it is, we're highly educated ourselves, and, when I was looking at, my kid has been visiting schools, when I was looking at the school, I'm like, beyond giving him the math language, have nothing to do to get him ready to go to school, because he knows how to learn. There's nothing he has to know to walk into his high school. He was sitting in the math class, and they were talking, and about 5 minutes in, he's like, yeah, I figured out they were talking about averages. And he knows his averages because that's how he knows his health in the game he plays. He knows he gets this unit in the game, and it corresponds to that many percentages. And he's been doing averages anyways. But I was just like, I've consistently found that, and that might be why some of your younger kids are not so confident, is, they're not all the way there yet, especially if you're 7 or 8 or you have all this family. But
Well, they're
I mean,
confident.
you know, and the,
The little ones are confident.
oh yeah,
It's the ones who are kind
Oh,
of going on,
yes, yeah.
12, 13. I mean, they're
Well,
not
part of that's
confident in
adolescence
anything.
too, yeah.
That's right. You want to be 12 again?
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's a terrible thing.
It's been an amazing thing, and so I've just been blown away by this. And I find that my kid handles it fine. I have to keep going. You know, I'll get this idea, and I'm like, oh my God, everyone has to know this, and I'm gonna teach it to everybody. And then like I show up at school, and my kid's like, you've been here longer than 5 minutes. You need to leave. It's like, bye. You know? And so, because I will say, I'm gonna guess that's why your staff fails sometimes. They come in ready to like take over or something, and.
No, they don't. They're better. They know that. No better than that.
Right? You see them coming a mile off.
Yeah. No, we don't
I
hire
would
those
say
people.
A lot of it seems to be tracking in terms of development. And they have the space to do that, which may feed back into the learning disabilities. Because I know my kid, I mean, that he was already getting stressed out in the Montessori school at 7 because of the vision and the reading. And I'm like, I'm not going to have them tell him he's a crappy reader for the next,
10 years.
So do you have a final, prolific, wise thought
Oh.
to share with us? A sound bite? Sum it up. A nutshell.
chiseled in the stone.
Well, what shall I say? If I manage to survive 50 years of this, it must be a really good thing because I am a spoiled brat.
Hear, hear.
I never do things I don't want to do.
Thank you, Mimsy.
Thank you.
What a treat.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, Mimsy, you can go have a snack. You don't have to pray.
What?
You can go eat. You don't have to pray.
I just want to take this thing off.